Hello everyone. In this video, we will go through the industrial buying behavior. And in particular, I'll share with you the major differences between when the buying process is carried out by an organization with respect to when it's carried out by consumers. We will look at different business scenarios, and we will look at the different steps that the purchasing process includes, looking at both the linear and an extended purchasing process model. Then we will look at how a procurement has got an impact on the purchasing activities. At the end, we will finish looking at how effectively companies carried out purchasing activities, dealing with bottlenecks as well as problems. Let's get into our first point now. Organizational buying behavior. Basically, in the companies, the purchasing process is carried out by a professional, by professionals. This means more rational, more informed, less emotional. And it is mainly related to derived demand. So the company has got a production plan and the buyer needs to get whatever the company needs in order to make the production plan the company has established. It's also involved in the company large quantities and often large amount of money. And it's rather complex in its dynamic, involving often several departments in the company. In fact, we may want to look at different purchasing scenarios. In particular, we may want to take into account a scenario where the product complexity is low and high, and where the commercial uncertainty is low and high. When the product complexity is low, basically the purchasing department can move on its own, getting, of course, a specification, the details of the requirement, and then selecting the best suppliers. But when the product complexity is higher, the engineering department needs to be deeply involved since the very beginning, because they really need to look at the technical aspects. Similarly, when the commercial uncertainty is low, basically there's no many risk and there's no much money involved in that specific purchasing activities, the purchasing department can work on its own. While when the commercial uncertainty, where the amount of money is very large because it's an investment or because it has got a major impact on the stock level, the finance department is normally involved. And when both the product complexity and the commercial uncertainty are higher, it's interdepartmental, it's interfunctional. So all the three departments are involved, and sometimes also top management and other departments in the company. And if we look, it's not only organizational complex because there are several departments involved, also because many steps are involved into the purchasing processes. Mainly, the purchasing process starts with the definition of the specification. Could be very general, functional specification, or could be very technical ones. Then, on the basis of this specification, the buyer looks on the market, finds alternative suppliers, eventually pre-qualify them, eventually ask a request for quotation, and then at the end he selects one or few suppliers to move forward. Only at the third stage we've got actually the negotiating the contract. So it's not that the buyer is going immediately, is involved only in the contract negotiation, is involved earlier and later. The third step is a contract negotiation. And the contract negotiation can be very articulated if the contract is very large, and if the contract is complex. The buyer may go for a fixed price for a complex product or service, or he may go for a cost plus in order to get more flexibility in terms of pricing. Then there is, in fact, the actual phase of the ordering, and the ordering can be for a single delivery or for multiple delivery across a period of time. Often the buyer is also involved, or the purchasing department is also involved in expediting. So dealing with all the problems and sometimes the delays related to the supply delivering the goods. Not always in time, not always in full, not always according to the standards. And this leads to the final steps, which is the evaluation steps, evaluating the supply performance overall. And this is a final step, but it's also the initial step, because in next purchasing cycle, the evaluation of the supplier will be one of the elements taken into account by the purchaser. Sometimes, in fact, it's more a circular model that is effective more than this linear. And there is an extended purchasing model which takes into account an initial part of the sourcing, a more focused part of the purchasing, and then a specific focus on the administrative part, on the payment, more as a circular more than a linear. And it has to be highlighted that in the extended purchasing models, there are also two additional elements. One is the risk management. When I'm purchasing, I should always keep in mind the element of risk, especially if I do global sourcing, as well as a stakeholder management that is becoming more and more relevant also with respect to sustainable sourcing. If sustainable sourcing is in fact changing the scenario, but even more, e-procurement is changing the scenario of the purchasing process. E-procurement can be done as purchasing on electronic markets, can be done as electronic options, or for small purchases, it can be done as purchasing from an electronic catalog, ordering directly from them. The e-procurement has got several advantages, also a few disadvantages, but mainly it can enlarge the amount of suppliers taken into account. It can make more transparent the overall process, and it can simplify and reduce the administrative costs. In fact, these three elements are major bottlenecks and major problems that the purchasing activities needs always to deal with. So in general, whether it's e-procurement or it's traditional procurement, the purchasing department needs to deal with certain problems, both at the design level and the implementation level. They are mainly related to the specifications. Sometimes the purchasing department received very highly defined, highly detailed specification. Can be difficult to purchase that. Sometimes the purchasing department does an inadequate supplier selection, too short. Sometimes even too biased by personal relationships, not taking into account the best suppliers. Sometimes the purchasing department gives too much emphasis on price. Price is a very important element, but it shouldn't be all. The purchasing department should look at the total cost of ownership, and sometimes buying something that is more expensive can result in an item or a service that is less costly during the life during its useful life. Then there can be poor administration. So the purchasing department can be badly organized in managing the orders, following the suppliers, and following the deliveries. So purchasing, it's a complex process, and it's involved not only the purchasing department.